Tonight, we're going to be talking a little bit about marriage. And my picture of marriage was very profound. Till I was 11 years old, I grew up in Hartford, Connecticut. My dad was a CPA at Pratt Whitney, and he would walk through the door at 5:30 every afternoon and say, in a very cheery voice, "Daddy's home." And at that, my mother, wherever she was in the house, would drop what she was doing and run across the house and throw herself into their arms, and they would make out the front door. Much to the disgust of my sister and I. We would go back to watching I Love Lucy or whatever it was, and my sister would grumble, "You don't need to find a room." They did that for 53 years. I had no idea what I was growing up with or what I was growing up in the presence of, and how remarkable they were, and they were each other's best friends and lovers their entire lives. I became a marriage shrink when I was 23 years old, did my first couple sessions, and I've been doing that my whole life. Which means, like Dr. Blakeney and like Diana, we have a 50-yard line seat at every way to blow up a relationship, as well as every way to do it pretty good. When I was growing up, we had Milton Bradley board games. Y'all remember that? Game of Life and Sorry and Stratego and all those things. And you'd have the name of the game on the front, and you tear open the cellophane, and you flip over on the back side of the box top. And what was written on the back side of the box top? Anybody remember? What was it? The rules, absolutely. The rules were back there. And wouldn't it be wonderful if in your marriage or the relationship that you're in, y'all's picture is on the front of that game, you could flip that thing over and know what the rules are. Wouldn't that be great? And you say, yeah, that's not going to happen. Tonight, what I'd like to humbly offer to you is my take on what are some basic rules of relationships. If people will do this, their marriages are going to be a little bit better. And if they'll give this a try. And let me say at the outset a couple of things about this. One, I've been in a lot of speeches that were marriage and relationship oriented where it was, let's see what we can do to beat the guys up and make them get in line. And we're not going to be doing that. The things I want to share with you are things that both the guys and the girls probably need to give some attention to. Number two, I'm going to have real small expectations here. If you come away with maybe one or two ideas that might be helpful for you to do just a little bit better in your marriage or in your relationship, then we're done okay. Is that all right? I've got seven of them I want to share with you. I'm going to go really fast. We could spend a lot of time on any one of them. I'm going to go real quick tonight. We're going to hit on 7 of these, and at the end of this, I want to say a word or two to you about being a parent here at Legacy Christian and what that means related to all this. Will someone remind me to do that? Because I get busy and forget. All right. Rule number 1 is the rule of personal responsibility. This is the first one, this is the most important one, and this is the one we start with. The rule of personal responsibility was postulated by Dr. Richard Stewart back in the 1980s, and he said, quote, "For a relationship to be really good, I need to take a position that says, I am responsible for those attitudes and actions that lead to my personal fulfillment and happiness." Let me say that again because that's a mouthful. I'm responsible for those attitudes and actions that lead to my own personal happiness and responsibility, and happiness and fulfillment. Now, what does that have to do with marriage and relationships? Just this. If you came with Sarah, Diana, and I into one of our couple sessions, into a first session with a couple that are crossways with each other, and you listen to them talk, well, you tell me. Are they sitting there and is the guy going, I'm just kind of a dirt clod sometimes, and I kind of ignore things and don't do what I'm supposed to do, and the guy's sitting there going, you know what, I'm terrible to live with some days, I just don't what's that the other. Are they doing that? No, he's blaming her and she's blaming him, and we sit through about 45, 50 minutes of that till we come around to where we say to them, look, we are going to treat the third person here in the room, and that third person is y'all's relationship. And we're going to assume that you're both contributing to the problem, which means we both need you to contribute to the what? To the solution, absolutely. Do they believe that? Well, no, but we get them around to that. What I'm saying to you tonight is, for your marriage to do well, there are going to be things that you decide to do, and to do a little bit differently, and you're the only one who can make that decision. And you're going to be a whole heck of a lot easier to live with if you decide to do those things versus being pushed into it. There is a second rule related to this that's not the second rule. Don't change the slide yet, but it's real important. It's called the I'll change first rule. The I'll change first rule says there's probably some stuff that would make me easier to live with as a human being, and if I would go ahead and do those things, life would be a lot happier. The Orientals talk about the principle of Jung, and the principle of Jung says that there is no one of us that is easy to live with without shaving off some of the rough edges, and that's the I'll change first. So our relationships are going to do a lot better. We're going to be a lot easier to live with if, number one, I'll say there's probably some work for me to do, and number two, I probably need to go ahead and do that on my own versus waiting for everybody to strong-arm me into doing those things. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, one or two of you are sitting out there right now and you're going, not me. I'm great to live with. And what I need to tell you is your whole family's hoping that you'll take that one to heart. All right, so that's rule number one. We all right with that one? That's the basis of all the others. Rule number two is going to be what I call the veggies and dessert rule. Now, those that are around me an awful lot hear me talk about veggies and dessert. What I'm going to say to you is that in every relationship, there's X amount of vegetables to be eaten. But we do that because we really know there's a lot of what? There's a lot of dessert. Growing up in my mother's house, up in Hartford, she had an approach to dinner. We'd go down to the A&P, and she would put her shopping cart in the vegetable aisle, and she would go down and she would buy 1 can of every Del Monte vegetable that was made. I like 3 vegetables: peas, beans, and corn. Which means the other 27 nights of the month, I was heck out of luck. Because she would get canned okra, beets. I still get the gas reflex over beets. Carrots. And the worst can was that thing called mixed vegetables. Y'all remember that thing? They take all the vegetables that nobody will buy, and they cut them up into little pieces, and they shove them into a can, and generally they take all the lima beans that nobody wants, and they dump about 40 pounds into that, and then to make it even more appetizing, they mix the juices together. Right? I would get off the school bus and I could smell the mixed vegetables cooking that night. And I knew, y'all remember the Addams Family with Lurch? Y'all remember him? Where he would go, "Argh." You knew it was going to be a bad night. Now, what did my mother do? My mother was an awesome pie maker. She would make homemade crusts that were so good we'd get her to make a couple of 3 extra and we just pop them like popcorn. And sitting on the counter, she made meringue pies. So you get that 3-inch meringue with little curlicues with the sugar droplets coming off top. Coconut meringue, lemon meringue, chocolate meringue. Am I making y'all hungry? I hope so. Every time it was mixed vegetables night, what was sitting on the counter? A big old pie. And what was the message? You get those mixed vegetables down without them coming back up, which was a challenge for me. There will be a big chunk of pie headed your direction. You say, I get it. But what on earth does that have to do with marriage and relationships? Just this. Every relationship is going to have X amount of vegetables. Paying bills. COVID, school, online, Zoom, crises, car repairs, sickness, cleaning the toilet. Every family, every marriage versus has X amount of vegetables that just have to be done. And a good marriage is going to have a balance between the vegetables and the what? The dessert. Your partner shows you. It's called choice exchange theory. Why we fall in love with the people we fall in love with. We don't know for sure, but there's one theory out there. And that theory has to do with vegetables and dessert. They decided that that gal over there is going to give me the biggest slice of pie, the biggest desserts. They're going to be the most rewarding person in the world for me ever to be with. And that's my beloved. That's my life partner. And we're going to have to eat some vegetables, but I know that I'm going to get there's going to be pie at the end of the day, at the end of the year, throughout. Now this is where we run into problems on this deal. Because in some relationships, people don't trade fairly. And that's what we do a lot of in our work, is we renegotiate the trading. Because you get some folks along that really want a lot of pie, and they don't want what? They don't want to eat the vegetables. And so they hand those vegetables over to their partner and say, here, would you eat these lima beans for me? Well, I guess so, because I love you, but And the next day they don't want to eat the vegetables. Will you do this for me? So you get relationships that are out of balance. Does that make sense? And so over time, the person that's eating a steady diet of veggies, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, eventually they call me on the phone and say, listen, I need to come in and talk with you because I'm just running out of steam on this deal. And the other partner's sitting over there going, I don't see what you're so upset about. Seems fine to me. Why? Because they're eating coconut cream pie every day. Does that make sense? Yeah. So what we say to folks is, we say, if you want your relationship to go well, it's really important that everybody takes responsibility for eating the vegetables and everybody gets the rewards of eating pie. You say, that's really profound for somebody with an earned doctorate to eat. Yeah, I know. But it really does work. Does that would make sense? All right. We're headed to number 3. Number 3 is the lover's rule. This one I can't believe I have to talk about, but I'm going to. A colleague of mine says it this way. He says, and I quote, spouses need time for spousing. Folks get married because there is that indescribable thing we call chemistry. People can normally describe the moment they saw the person they fell in love with. They lay eyes on them. And they'll describe that chemistry. And they still have that. And they get married because of chemistry and attraction and romance and affection and all this other stuff. Then they get married, and what do? They turn into taxi drivers and financial analysts and grocery shoppers and parents and caretakers. They're doing everything in the world except being lovers with each other. So I'm all the time having to encourage my couples, I need you guys to be lovers again. And they'll look at me like I'm crazy. I call this thing the stress of success. That's a big one in Dallas, and y'all got it here in Frisco. We have a campus, everything has a campus here in Frisco, so I'm up here all the time. Our campus is over here by the water tower on Parkwood. And you're driving up the tollway, there's all the trappings of success. You know, you got IKEA, you got these Lexus, you got the private schools, you got big homes, you got in North Dallas where I live, the same way. We're in a success status culture, which means we all live with big stress sandwiches all the time. Which means y'all got 50 things to be doing right now that you're thinking of as I'm talking. Which means my clients get too busy for sex. I have these lovely couples come in. I had one the other day came in, and they are delightful. They're interesting. They're engaging. They are fun. And they are beautiful people. They got it all. And I looked at them and I said, y'all having a good sex life? Everything going real good? And they both look at me and go, well, when we get around to it, it's okay, it's just great. What do you mean when you get around to it? How often? Well, it's been a while. Why? Well, we kind of get tired. No. Not going to do that. Not going to do that. We spouses need time for spousing, which means affection, which means romance. We're coming up to Valentine's Day, right? Everybody got big plans for that thing? Should. Spouses need time for spouses. So the stress of success can lead folks to being too tired for that one. Let me mention another one related to this. I'm staying on the others thing, because I don't think y'all believe me yet. Or this is a good Christian school. Can we use the word sex here in the cafeteria? Are the walls going to come tumbling down?
No, we can't.
I don't want to say the S word because that sounds worse.
Right.
Okay.
Agreed.
The second one related to this, there's a guy named David Snarch. And Dr. Snarch studied marriage relationship related to sexuality. I don't want to mention this one to you because probably no one's going to talk to you about this. And he talked about low drive and high drive. And one of the problems we run into in a lot of marriages is you got a partner that's high drive, married to a partner that's moderate or low drive. Say, what's high drive? High drive is, I would enjoy it in the morning. Would you enjoy it in the evening? I enjoy it in the evening too. I might even enjoy it right in between or just talking about it. That's high drive. What's low drive? Oh, I think about it once a week or a couple times a month. And God, in His infinite sense of humor, has those people meet, have chemistry, and fall in love with one another. And then they spend the next 30 years trying to negotiate that thing out. High drive and low drive. Incidentally, let me do the boys and girls thing. High drive is not a male thing, low drive is not a female thing. I meet women who are high drive and men who are high drive. I meet men and women who are low drive. It has nothing to do with gender, it has to do with just the way we're physiologically made up. So what we say to folks is on that deal, if you're in a marriage where you all are a little different on that deal, then you need to have a language to talk about that a little bit. You need to be able to converse about our differences in that area. The person that's a little high drive sometimes feels like they're chasing the other one around all the time. And the person that's low drive feels like, oh my gosh, leave me alone. Well, we need to talk about that thing. I'll never get invited back here, I'm sure. While I'm blowing my reputation totally out of water, let me do my last illustration on this. It has to do with novelty and variety. When I was in graduate school at Abilene Christian, they just opened their Marriage and Family Institute, and I was in the second class. I just got married. We'd been married less than 6 months, I guess. And her family lived out there, so we were all the time doing stuff with her family. Her younger brother was in Eagle Scouts, and they would perform on the weekends an Indian tribal dance. So he was the medicine man, and they do all sorts of stuff. I was in graduate school to be a marriage shrink, and that particular semester, I was taking sex therapy with Dr. Ed Coates. And Dr. Coates was one of the leading figures in Texas in the early days in sex therapy. He was a true expert. And so we'd be in class on Tuesday nights from 6 o'clock to 9:30 talking solid about sex. And of course, we'd all go home just hot wired as we could possibly be and have wild sex all night long. How was class? No, come in bed. I can't talk right now. One night he gets off onto how to have good sex in your marriage long term. And I was a bit of an overachiever. So I'm taking notes on everything he takes down. It said novelty and variety. Novelty and variety. All right, novelty and variety, novelty and variety. Said, Coach, what do you mean by that? Well, lingerie, vacations, role play, dress up. Excuse me, role play? What do you mean role play? Well, cops and robbers, nurses and doctors, this, that, and the other. Now, I've been taking psychological tests and discovered I have a function of my personality called ideaphoria, which means my brain comes up with ideas all the time. Metaphors, stories, ideas. Winston Churchill was that way. They used to say about Winston Churchill, he'd have 99 ideas every day, and 98 of them you didn't want to touch with a 10-foot pole. And that was me. I'm driving home from class, and I'm thinking about that lecture, and I'm an overachiever, and I'm thinking, Novelty and variety. I need to put some novelty and variety into my marriage, into our sex life. Well, we've been married for 3 months. We did not need novelty and variety. We needed, an air hookup over the bed, to just give us oxygen. But I'm an overachiever, so here we go. So I go to my brother-in-law, and I said, listen, you got that medicine man suit that you dress up in. Y'all don't get ahead of me. The story gets better, okay? He said, yeah, I do. I said, I need to borrow that thing. He said, well, why do you borrow that? Because I'm going to seduce your sister. We're going to have a night of unparalleled romance, and she's going to swoon. I always wanted a woman to swoon in my arms. I figured that was the way to do it. So I did. He let me borrow that thing. I stuck it back in the closet and waited for the right opportune evening. We lived in the duplex, little old shotgun thing, kitchen in front, bedroom at the back, long hallway. It was about 10:30. I was studying for an exam. We'd had a late dinner, and she was in the kitchen, and I pulled that thing out. The medicine man outfit was a bison head. Big old snout about out here, big old black hair, big beady eyes. All you could see was my chin, and 2 horns sticking up like this. Had the big long back going down my back, all that hair in it, and then 2 arms holding out, and they had bear claws out like this. Loaded that thing on, put on the loincloth, because that's always very seductive. Women love that Tarzan look. And my ex was a Mary Kay Cosmetics rep. You remember those folks? They had the big pink bags. She had cosmetics everywhere. So took a bunch of these red cosmetics and smeared my chest with war paint. And then went creeping down the hall. The whole duplex was bone dead black as it could be. She was bent over the refrigerator down on her knees, throwing Tupperware into the refrigerator. And all that was lighting up the duplex was that little 40-watt bulb. And I ran the refrigerator while she's got her head stuck in there and just did this number right here. She looks up, and as Simon and Garfunkel said in one of their songs, I heard words I never heard in the Bible. There's a trauma response. You have fight, flight, or freeze. She froze first. She looked frightful, and then there was fight. She was throwing every piece of Tupperware she could possibly get. Neighbors calling over, you guys okay? Yeah, we're fine. I need to use your bedroom tonight. My point there being, though, my execution was wrong, but the idea was what? Was completely valid. Now, I never tried that again on her. But what I'm saying to you is, on this one right here, the same old thing, day after day, week after week, month after month, just gets stale. And whether it's chicken fried steak on Thursday night, or the way we pursue our love life, we recommend novelty and variety. Okay? Incidentally, I have students that have heard that story, and I'll see them years later in public or in airports, and they'll wave at me and they'll do this. So y'all have permission to use my signal for now. Let's do the next one. Safety rule. Safety rule. This one, simply put, is I do not put anything into the relationship that is a threat to it. I'll say that again. I will not introduce anything into the relationship that is a threat to the relationship. I will not introduce job demands that are a threat to the relationship. People put all kinds of things into their marriage that hurt it. Could be a hobby, could be their mom and their daddy. People get married and they're still really married to their mom and dad. Doesn't work. Could be good things, exercise, fitness. Could be church. People are married to the church more than they're married to their spouse. I get people up at Amberton that are working on their 6th or 7th degree. Why are you up here still in school? Well, not much going on at home. Not real happy. I'm not going to introduce anything into the relationship that will be a threat to it. I'm going to be very, very soft and gentle with what I'm about to say, which is, I'm not going to introduce anybody into the relationship that is a person that would be a threat to that relationship. Years ago, I had a client who had a lot of psychological disorders and problems and that sort of thing. And she got real attached to me. This was back before emails and texting and all this other stuff, back in the Stone Age. And she would write me love letters and tell me when her husband was going to be out of town and when I could come over and all this other stuff. I was in supervision at that point in time, and so I let my supervisor know, and he told me how to handle that. And then, who else did I need to talk to about that? I need to talk to my spouse. You say, there's somebody out there that's going to be a threat to that deal. Sure is. That went on for 5 years. My file on that thing was about yay thick. I left where I was working and moved to another place to work. Well, actually moved to Amberton and work, and she followed me to Amberton and enrolled in the program. She's going to be a student. What's my point here? My point here is that we need good boundaries around members of the opposite sex. And in marriage, we need a language to talk about that. Now, I have clients that will say to me, yeah, but you don't know Fred, my husband. There's no woman be attracted to him. I mean, I'm not worried about that. You just need to be around Fred. And what I say to her is, have you been to the State Fair of Texas? Well, yeah. Have you seen some of the weird couples that are roaming around out there? Well, yeah. Well, my point is, there's a woman for every man on the face of the earth. So somebody's going to think Fred's hot stuff. There is a definition of marriage that is powerful, that says marriage is three things. It is sexual, we just talked about that one. It is reciprocal, that's veggies and dessert, trading fairly. And number three, it is representational. By that I mean, we can hold the emotional bonds between ourselves and our partner within us. And we can revisit those things in our minds. Our children can't do that. When kids get dropped off at the daycare, they're screaming and going crazy because they think mom and dad are gone. Children do not experience love as representational. They cannot hold the emotion in themselves here. My mother could do that. When my dad passed away 20 years ago, my mother laid down on the couch and grieved for a good 5 years. I thought she was done. Because that 53-year ending was representationally being held within her. Does that make sense? Yeah. In fact, real funny deal. They asked me one time at Thanksgiving dinner. Mother was one of these people who say anything. We're talking about sex a minute ago. We were at Thanksgiving dinner about year 5 when she was coming out of her grief. And one of the granddaughters said, "Me, what do you miss most about Dad, about Papa?" And she said, "The way he made love to me." And we said, "Well, thank you very much. Pass it." Marriage is principally an emotional bond. Let me say that again. Marriage is an emotional bond. It is safety. It is security. It is friendship. It is that soft place to land. It's when everything goes south and you've been sitting on the tollway for 2 hours and everything's gone wrong all day. It is that person where the disappointments come that you can go to. It is that safe place to land. It is that strong emotional bond that provides us that emotional sustenance to get through the rest of this crazy world. And that is a good thing. That's why the good Lord said it's not good for man to be what? Alone. Because we need that soft place to land. And that emotional bond has got to be protected. When Haley, my youngest, was growing up, we'd be walking around, or we'd be in the movies or whatever. She had this habit. She'd take her thumbnail, and she would be holding her hand, and she would rub it on that thumb right there. We'd be in the movie theater, and it'd be pitch black, and I'd feel her rubbing that thumbnail right there. When I'm having a bad day, and my students are not doing what they're supposed to do, my clients are acting stupid, or I'm feeling lousy or whatever, I pull out that memory. Can I feel my thumbnail being scratched? Well, of course. Of course. What is that? That is the power of the representational, emotional bond between a father and a daughter. And the same thing happens between a husband and wife. Good stuff or not? Oh my gosh, that's such good stuff. That's such good stuff. And we want to protect it. Make sense? Ready to move on? Move on, please. All right. Therapist without portfolio. Okay, I can do this one kind of quickly. But this one is really important. We would recommend that you not be a therapist without portfolio or hire a therapist without portfolio. In other words, what I'm saying to you is, it is not good for you to tell your marital stuff to everybody else. You tell it to your partner, or you tell it to a trained person that can listen to that stuff. But you all know, and I do too, people out there that are having problems, and they're talking to who? Anybody that they can get to listen to them. Sometimes because they're just real expert, a lot of times they're under stress, but sometimes it's just because they want everybody to know. Now let me tell you the problem with that. There's a number of problems with that, but let me tell you some of the really important problems with that. Problem number one is, there are people out there that do not have a life. And they would love to have yours. Because what they're going to do is they're going to take all that junk that's going on in your life that you just download with them, and they're going to go and talk to everybody they know about that, because that gives them some attention. That gives them purpose. That gives them a sense of meaning. And I'm sorry, that person might be your mom or your daddy or your sister. So just be real careful who you tell your marital stuff to, and don't trust a therapist without portfolio. Number two, the reason that that's a real problem is because most of those folks that you tell your marital stuff to are going to make it worse, not make it better. They're going to just screw it up royally. So there are people out there that are looking to get in the middle of everybody's muck and junk, and then they're going to make that muck and junk even worse. You say, you're awfully opinionated. Yes, I am. Folks that specialize in this do a little consumer thing. If you need to talk to a professional about your marriage, you're looking for what's called an LMFT, a licensed marriage and family therapist. That's the specialist that does this thing. We get a degree in it. We're supervised for 3,000 hours to do it. I have to do continuing education every year to keep doing it. And I have a license that they hold their thumb over in the state of Texas to make sure I know what I'm doing. And if I don't, they kick my butt. Quote unquote. You want somebody that really knows what they're doing if you're having difficulties in your marriage. And incidentally, the difficulties in marriage sometimes have nothing to do with problems between the two people. Sometimes what hits is a problem outside of the marriage that they don't know how to deal with. What are we going to do? And it's rocking their boat. We've never encountered this. Got a great marriage, but we just had so much happiness. Had a case like that happen last week. Couple's got a great marriage, but they've been hit by about 4 or 5 or 6 things all in the space of 18 months. And they walk in and say, we're reeling. Well, yeah, that's of course, because you're maxed out on this deal. Sit down, let's talk about that stuff. So, I'm going to leave this one. Does that one make sense to you? Okay, let's roll to the next one then, which is the red flags rule. The red flags rule. When I was in college, Kansas came out with Point of No Return, that album that had Carry On My Wayward Son. And we lived in the dorm, and the guys next to us, up on the 4th floor, This was back in the day when speakers, your status was the size of your stereo speakers. And these guys had stereo speakers mounted that were about the size of this cable right here. I mean, they were just enormous and hooked up. And these guys loved Kansas, Carry On My Wayward Son. So every morning at 6:30, Monday through Friday, that was the first thing that hit. And it has this intro to it that has 4 bass drum beats. Boom, 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 boom. And then there's a flam on the snare drum. Da-da-da. Then there's these big guitar licks. Everybody know the song? But there's those 4 bass drum beats. So you're laying there at 6:30 in the morning, and these speakers go off, and you hear this boom, 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 boom. And you know, oh my gosh, Kansas is fixing to start. It's time to get up. So there was this distant early warning of the walls are fixing to shake. What does that have to do with marriage? Just this. There are going to be times that your partner is going to come to you with a 4-beat intro. They're going to say, there's something I need us to attend to. I need us to talk about this. Or I'm a little worried about this. Or I'm not sure about this. And they're sending up a red flag. Make sense? They're asking for you to attend to something. Some spouses are very in your face about that. They'll just walk in and say, there it is. Some of you are what I call, those are what I call linebackers. They just hit you and hold and boom, and they tell you this is good. Some of you are finesse runners. By that I mean, they'll come and say, have you thought about da-da-da-da-da-da? That's their way of saying, I thought about this and we need to talk. But they're a finesse runner. They're running around hoping you'll notice. Either way, if my partner comes to me and says, there's something that I think we need to give some attention to, and I'd like for us to talk about this, everything stops. Everything stops. And I've got to give attention to that, because if I do not, 2 things could potentially happen. Number 1 is we might separate slightly. In other words, there could be some distance in the relationship. Values could be changing. Commitments could be changing. The other thing that could happen is it begins to sow the seeds that this person really does not have my best interest at heart. They're not hearing me because I keep saying, hey, can we talk about this? Can we talk about this? Can we talk about this? And they're not hearing me. Sarah and Diana and I work all the time with relationships where someone will call on the phone and say, I need to get in here, can you see me today? Or this week, I need to get in as quick as I can. We get in there as quick as we can. They sit down and they say, my spouse has thrown in the towel on this deal. They're done. And I don't know what's going on. And you've got to save this marriage. And you've got to do this and this. And they're just frantic. Okay. So you get the spouse in there and they sit down and talk, and they will say, almost without exception, I tried to talk to him 10 years ago. I tried to talk to him 9 years ago, 8 years ago. I've spent years trying to get this person's attention. And this bad behavior or this attitude or these habits or whatever it may be have finally taken the gas out of the tank. And they will look at me and they will say, you seem like a very, very nice man. And I'm sure you're a great therapist. But I'm done. I'm done. I tell my students that I train to be therapists, everybody has what I call an internal time clock of how long they will put up with bad behavior. And we never know what that time clock is. Sometimes the person doesn't know what their own time clock is. But you never, ever want to tread on that ice of banking that the other person will not eventually run out of gas. Make sense? It's more fun to talk about sex, isn't it? And buy some kids. Let's do the next one. Logs of trust. This is number 7. We doing okay, everybody?
Doing good?
Y'all staying awake? All right. Do I need to, please don't ask me to sing. That wouldn't be helpful. All right. Logs of trust. What is the most valuable commodity in a marriage? Besides love, is that right there? It is trust. Tell you a quick story. When I was 18, graduated from Dallas Christian. I went to Dallas Christian High School, went to a Christian high school. We moved to Parkwood, D.C. I love Christian school. It had a profound impact on my life. One of the greatest experiences was being in a Christian school. And I'm still friends with people I went to school with and professors, teachers, and coaches. Still lifelong friends. So I love schools like this and think so much of what y'all are doing. But that summer after I graduated from D.C., went to East Texas, Camp Deer Run, and I was camp counselor out there. And we had a tradition. We would go and we would do cookouts out in the woods with those campers every evening. And the way we would do it, we had a tradition that send everybody out in the woods to get some wood. Everybody bring their stick in, and they throw it on, and they make a campfire the first night. And then we sit around that campfire for a while and tell stories and devotional talks and memories and laughs and do all kinds of different things every night. Come back the next night, and there'd be a big pile of ash. We'd go get the sticks, come make another fire, do the same thing. Do that night after night for 13 nights. And then the last night we were together, we come and have this final goodbye campfire. And by the end of those 2 weeks, there was this huge pile of ash that had built up. And the camp director would come forward and he would say, that ash is the memories that you all have of the last 2 weeks. We have burned those events, those memories, those stories, those experiences, those logs, and those memories, the trust that you've given us are those ashes right there. So my statement to you tonight, if there's one that you take with you, is this. Trust is the ashes from the logs of mutually shared experiences. It is my favorite expression in marriage. I'll say it again. Trust is the ashes from the logs of mutually shared experiences. What do good marriages do? It's real simple. Every day, he does something small and seemingly insignificant. It's like picking up that stick and he throws it onto the marriage fire. I'm going to be home a bit late and I'll stop by and bring home some dinner. And he does that. She said, that's okay, I'll pick up the kids and I'll get them to the program and we'll meet you there. She tosses. He works hard and throws that money into the bank account and pays bills. She works hard and throws money in the bank account and they save up for college or get poor sending all their kids to college. They do the business. And every time they do what they say they're going to do, they burn a log. And over time, trust is the ashes from them doing what they said they were going to do. Which means trust has 2 dimensions to it. It has time. It has to have time to build up. And it has 2 actions. Me doing what I said I want to do. Make sense? Folks come into me and they have built a marriage over 5 years, 10 years, 15 years where they have done that. Where they have done what they said they were going to do. And that marriage is rock solid. I mean, it's right there. Folks haven't done that. One or the other of them, maybe both of them, have not done what they said they were going to do. And they're not trustworthy. And it's like taking a wet dry back into your living room and sticking the nozzle into your fireplace and sucking all that ash out. And it's gone. And they want Diana and Sarah and me to magically make what appear? Ash. They say, can't we just automatically have all that put back in? Well, no. It can be done, Well, it's going to take some time, and it's going to take you doing what you said you're going to do. Does that make sense? So we tell folks trust is the ashes from the logs of mutually shared experiences. Now, that's my 7. Personal responsibility, safety, being each other's lover, trade fairly, veggies and dessert. Don't tell your stuff to everybody in the neighborhood. And burn some logs of trust. I want to say one other thing to you. And then we'll do questions and answers. You'll have those. My kids are both cops. Jenna mentioned that a moment ago. You guys are parents, which means you're parents, and you're sending your kids to a great school, which means you're working real hard. You are the elite parents because you show up at a parenting dinner on what's tonight, Monday night? You got a lot of things to be doing. Y'all are trying real hard to do this thing right. Both my kids are cops. Jared's 33. He's been on the Fort Worth force for 10 years. He's terrific. I didn't want him to be a cop, and he slapped me around and said, yeah, this is going to happen. His partner was the only police officer who's been shot in the line of duty in Fort Worth in the last 15 years. And he pulled that guy out of the gun battle. He later died. He's a good guy. My daughter is 4'11", weighs 120 pounds, and is a police officer in Guthrie, Oklahoma. She's the top arresting officer in her department, and she could take down any one of you old boys that fast. I call her an attack chihuahua. She spent the days in defensive tactics school, which meant she was hand-to-hand combat with ex-Navy SEALs. That's what she likes to do for fun. People ask me all the time, what did you do to raise 2 cops? How did that happen? And I thought a lot about that. And I think I know the answer to that. I think the answer to that was because her mother and I were on the same page. And we teamed up. And we gave them significance and security. Security, which means we love you. And nothing will ever come between that. Significance, which means we're behind you to do whatever you want to do with your life. Make sense? My point is this. You're going to sacrifice a lot of things. You're going to sacrifice money to send them to college, and you're going to get them tutoring to take the SATs, and you're going to get them athletic lessons and team stuff, and you're going to take them to church, and you're going to send them to Legacy Christian, all this other stuff. Let me tell you the greatest gift you can give your kids. I promise you. The greatest gift you can give them is them seeing the love between you and your spouse. They see a great marriage and 2 parents working together, and I guarantee you that'll be what they talk about. That'll be what they talk about. Because we work with folks all the time that didn't get that. And they're trying to get it now after the fact. Sound okay? You all have been very kind to me tonight. You have stayed awake and laughed at all the right places. And Jenna, do we want to do a couple of questions? Yeah. The question was, you've been married for a while and you kind of gotten into a rut of routine. You know what you need to do, but just haven't done it yet. Did I nail it? Very good. It's a great question. Thanks. The answer to that is, 1, real typical. That's real common. Marriages tend to go through plateaus where they kind of get into that rut and then they stall out and take something to kind of kickstart it. Sometimes something happens in people's lives that kickstart it. Change a job, move, whatever it may be. It can happen externally. My advice to folks is, and I train my therapists this way all the time, I tell them, don't try and do something big. Pick out one little thing that'll start doing it a little bit different. So pick something small that y'all can do that would be a small change, but it'll get you started that direction. And it's probably going to be something that people come in all the time. We've talked about we need to start working out together. We need to, have a date night. Or we've been wanting to, get tickets for season tickets to this or whatever. Start with something small to just get in the habit of making that change and making that shift. And then stay with it for a minimum of 6 months. And then add something to that. But start small and start with something that you know you'll do a winner. Make sense? Yep. Good question. Anybody else? Great. Yeah. Blended families, which we could have a whole night on blended families. It's just, and I do a lot of work in the blended family area because you've got several things going on there. One, you've got, by definition, complexity. So every blended family is going to come with probably 3 times as much complexity as just the the normal family. Number 2 is, by definition, a blended family is born of grief. And I know that sounds real negative. Yeah, it sounds real important. But what's happened is there has been a loss on both sides that has led to then the reformation. And so what we have to make sure is we've got to make sure that everybody is processing or process the past in order to move into the present future. And a lot of times they have, sometimes they have not. So complexity, born of grief, or at least born of loss there, is really important. And then the third one that's really important is, I sound like teaching college here, and I apologize if I'm lecturing here. Does it sound like I'm lecturing? I don't mean it that way at all. There'll be a test in 15 minutes. The third one is you're developmentally out of sync. By that we mean that in the typical marriage, you know what it is, you're single, you're engaged, you get married, you have kids, and then you go crazy. In a blended family, parenting, the kids predate the marriage. And so there's developmentally a flip-flop on that deal. And what that causes then, it causes all kinds of complexity. Because it means that the kids are predating, so mom and dad or the new mom and dad are dating and they're newlyweds, but they're still parents, and there's this predating thing, so it's out of natural sync. It also means that the kids can detonate at will. Because the biological kids of mom know how to pull her chain, and dad's still learning her, the new dad is. And so the kids, if they want to disrupt stuff, oh my gosh, it's like, here we go. So, and I love doing books. When I married, she had a 4-year-old, so I became an instant dad. And it's a whole different world on that deal as well. Let me give you the name of a great resource. A guy's name is Ron Deal. Have you heard of him? It's called Successful Step Families. He was one of my students when I was first starting out teaching. He's a Christian-based author, terrific guy. He's going to be here in the Dallas area in the next month doing one of his seminars. But his books, his resources, his podcasts on step families and blended families and dating, all that other stuff is just priceless. He's wonderful. Yeah, great stuff. Does that help? Yeah. Good luck. I love working and I love doing premarital with blended families because they're some of the most motivated people because they really want it to work. And that's a whole specialization in premarital is doing blended premarital work, putting those second and third and fourth marriages together. Come see us at Amberton. Get a degree.